That's what's amazing about Fassbinder. We're still catching up with all his films. My own history with him, I'm definitely a second-generation fan. That means I really didn't know who he was during his lifetime. I was only getting interested in cinema. I read some other obituaries and longer stories about him, and what emerged was this portrait of a really fascinating filmmaker who had made, between the years 69 and 82, had made, like 43 films. He had written and directed stage plays and directed other plays he didn't write. He had done radio work, but one of his films was 8 hours long. One of the others was 15 and a half hours long, which I'm proud to say I've seen 3 times, one time in one weekend. So I'm a bit of a Fassbinder freak. It's exciting that all these years after his death, we're still catching up with the films. And I think I remember someone in an obituary writing that, like, oh my God, the work was so furious and the output so immense that we'll be years in catching up. And I think that's what's still going on. I mean, he'll forever be a hero because I think he's the most personal filmmaker imaginable. He gave everything of himself, put himself into his films so thoroughly. If you look at his career in a big, broad sense, you could see the early films kind of grew out of his theater work. As he had anti-theater, you could say they were sort of anti-films. And these are sort of anti-films, very critical of like German society, and they almost dare you to find your way into them. They've got a real attitude, a real like young filmmaker attitude. They're beautifully done. That's another thing about Fassbinder. As fast as he worked in as many films, he made 7 films in 1970 alone. They're never sloppy. They're kind of beautifully composed, thoroughly thought out and put together. They're meticulous in that way. Not at all sloppy or simple. But to me, I think the most interesting phase of him, and who knows where he could have gone, he died so young, but the middle phase, which I think kicks off in the early 70s and goes to about sort of the end of this second phase, which I find most intriguing. That's where he kind of was reinventing the family melodrama. He gets a lot of credit for that, and deservedly so, that he took. And the linchpin to this was his discovery of the films of Douglas Sirk. All That Heaven Allows is a film Fassbinder basically remade as Ali Fear Eats the Soul. Tarnished Angels, Written on the Wind, Imitation of Life, All I Desire, Time to Love and A Time to Die. So these are like some of the best melodramas ever made. Fassbinder was so inspired by these films, he kind of found his own way into them. And that is, he still made these kind of German indictments, but you found a much greater like emotional attachment to his characters. There was a certain love there that you don't quite feel in the early films, that you could find your way into these melodramas, and I think they work so well, and this is why I think he does get credit for the reinvention, because he could take these kind of tear-jerking melodramatic situations and make them in a completely, like, whether it's a working class or a very realistic setting. He had the right pitch to pull that off, which is, I think, a huge accomplishment. The last section of his career, if you want to call it that, were his kind of German Hollywood films that they were beautiful, and they're what he's most famous for. It would have been interesting to see where those were going.